I'm Marley Bird, and this is video 5 of the Nordic Knit Pullover. This has been a 5-week video series to teach you everything you need to know to complete this beautiful stranded colorwork pullover. We've made this sweater from the bottom up, and by this week's video, you should be ready to complete the final portion of the sweater and graft together your underarms. Once that is complete, you'll be ready to wear this sweater out tomorrow. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the pattern before we jump in. This is a free pattern available at Yarnspirations.com, and let's go ahead and jump to page 3, which is where I left you after video number 4. So at the end of video 4, you finished this portion of your sweater, which was changing to larger needles and working this chart pattern. On this chart pattern, there also was a correction. We did go over that. And I talked to you about how you were going to start beginning to decrease down your stitches. By the time you start this video, you should have this number of stitches on your needle. And we are continuing on only with our main color, okay? For the following portion of this sweater, we're going to be working on our smaller set of needles. So you can work on your smaller set of double points, or if you have a shorter length cable needle you want to use, but it's the smaller size needle, you could absolutely do that. As we work on our smaller set of needles, we're going to begin decreasing even more. These are more rapid decreases. And you do this every round, decreasing 8 stitches until you get down to this number of stitches, okay? On the following round, it tells you how many stitches you need to decrease depending on the size you're working on. But our ultimate goal here is to get to this number of stitches. Okay, that number of stitches there, that is what is around your collar, okay? Then you'll jump into a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and you work that ribbing till it measures about 1 inch. Then it says cast off in rib, and then we graft our underarms. So I know you already know how to do all of this. We've already talked about how to do decreases. We've talked about how to count our stitches. This is not anything new in our pattern, okay? When we come down here working in a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, that's not anything new in our pattern either, but casting off in rib pattern is. So I want to talk to you about what it means by casting off in rib, or as it's referred to in other patterns, cast off or bind off in pattern. It simply means you're going to continue working whatever pattern you've established. In this example, it's a knit 1, purl 1. And as you get the 2 stitches on your right hand needle and the back stitch jumps over the front stitch, you bind off. So you're just maintaining your stitch pattern as you're working around and working your bind off as normal. Now I do have a small little rib piece here that is a 2x2 rib pattern, but it will give you a good idea of how you would bind off in pattern. Let's say I'm ready to bind off these stitches. Well, I'm looking at a knit stitch there. I would go ahead and I would knit that stitch. Looking at a knit stitch on the next one, I would go ahead and knit that stitch. Then I would have the first one I did jump up and over that second one. Okay, my next stitch here is a purl. So instead of knitting it as I would if you were doing just a regular old bind off, I'm going to purl that stitch, but I'm still going to have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch. I actually like to move my yarn back to the back. It's just a personal preference. I think it looks better. Back stitch, jump up and over that front stitch and carry on. Next stitch is a purl. So I purl it. Again, it's personal preference. I like to move that stitch back, or my yarn, my working yarn back. But I have the back stitch jump over the front stitch. The only difference between working in pattern bind off or just a regular bind off is a regular bind off, we're just knitting all the stitches and binding them off as we go along. When we work in pattern, we continue in our established pattern of knit 1, purl 1, all the way around and bind off. Again, I do want to remind you this is a knit 2, purl 2, but it was to show you how all I would do is pay attention to what the stitch is on my needle and I knit it or purl it accordingly. Pretty easy stuff. Once you have that portion done, everything with your sweater is complete except grafting that underarm section. Remember when we put those stitches on holders? It's time to put those stitches now on some needles and do a Kitchener stitch. Hopefully you can see this well enough. This is the underarm portion of my very own sweater. And what I've done here is I've taken 2 double pointed needles and I've placed all of the stitches that I had on a holder from the body and the stitches I had on a holder from the sleeve, and I've placed them on my double points. I've left my scrap yarn in there just as a lifeline for right now, okay? What I want to do now is take a length of yarn in my main color and thread it onto a bent tip tapestry needle. Now, I do really like the steel or the metal tapestry needles, especially working with this yarn. I feel like it glides through the yarn much better than the plastic. And I'm going to start right down here with the needle that is on the body of my work. I'm going to go into this stitch as if to purl. And I'm going to pull my length of yarn through, making sure I leave myself a good enough size tail that I can go in and use this tail to act as a duplicate stitch if I need to later, but also to weave that in. Once I go in to purl that one, I'm going to go in as if to knit on the back one. Okay? So go in as if to knit on the back one. Now this back one, that is my yarn that was last attached, so it might get a little bit loose, but you can weave that in when we're all done. Now I've essentially joined my work and I'm ready to start the Kitchener stitch. So I'm going to come back to the front needle. I'm going to go in as if to knit and take that stitch off. And on the same needle, I'm going to go in as if to purl and leave that stitch on. On the back needle, I'm going to go in as if to purl on that first stitch and take it off. And then on the next stitch, I'm going to go in as if to knit and leave it on. Pull that through. Come to the front, I'm going to go in as if to knit and take it off. Go in as if to purl and leave it on. We work each needle independently. Back needle, I go in as if to purl and take it off, go in as if to knit on the next stitch on the back needle and leave it on. And then pull that through. Come back to the front, knit, take it off, purl, leave it on. Come back to the back. Let's see, purl, take it off, knit, leave it on. Knit, take it off, purl, leave it on. Purl, take it off, knit, leave it on. Knit, take it off, purl, leave it on. Purl, take it off, knit, leave it on. Knit, take it off, purl, leave it on. Purl, let's see here, purl, take it off, knit, leave it on. And we finish up with a knit, take it off, and purl, take it off. Okay, so now my needles are free. I can move those aside. And I did use my smaller DPNs to graft this together, but I want you to look at that. Can you see how nice that grafted together so seamlessly? It looks like it's just a basic knit stitch. You can see that my scrap yarn is still here holding those stitches. So if I had messed up, I could still rip out. It's no problem. Now all I do is take these ends here, and in the body of my work, see I have this big hole kind of going on here. This is where I would begin to work sort of like a duplicate stitch to seam this all together and pull it together. So I am using my tail that's still attached as my grafting yarn, and I am going to continue to simulate grafting stitches and pulling this together just so that I don't get this really big hole. So I'm using my tail to keep this hole from getting very large at my underarm. And I'm just trying to follow a path of stitches and create my own generated path essentially. So that way I can really pull that hole together. And the hole is there. It's just a natural thing that happens from the stitches pulling from over here and over here. But you can see just like that, like that's pulled together nice and neat. And if I wanted to, I could come up here and pull this just a little bit more. And I'm actually gonna just pull that over here and simulate like that's a stitch. Yeah, I like that. And then I would just pop this down in to the inside of my sweater, and we call that good. So that would be that edge of my sweater. I would weave this side in, come over here to this side, and I would do the same thing with this tail and with the tail that's on the inside. Just make sure I close up that hole. Once that is all done, your sweater is good to go. The last thing for you to do is just weave in your tails on the inside of the sweater and put it on. Hopefully you like it at this point because it's done. I have to tell you, I am loving all of the finished sweaters I am seeing over on Instagram and on Facebook. It is absolutely delightful to see the success all of you are achieving with this sweater. If you make it a sweater, be sure to share with me on social media by tagging me. Use hashtag MarleyBird or hashtag Yarnspirations. That way I can see your beautiful work and smash your like button. I will talk to you again very soon. I'm Marley Bird. This is the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Thanks. Thanks so much for joining me on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to hit subscribe. I've put a link right over there, or you can watch a couple of the videos I've already selected for you right down there. If you want to follow me on social media, I've put my links right over there. You could have all Marley all the time. Bye guys.